For many centuries, the city of Rome was the capital of a vast empire of 100 million souls that extended across most of Europe and North Africa, and parts of Southwest Asia as well. Rome's empire was truly magnificent, for her conquests of both Greece and Egypt had brought her both fantastic wealth and culture. But by the 3rd century A.D., the great empire of Rome was in serious trouble. Its enormous size made it difficult to rule. Its emperors were often corrupt or ineffective, and the ever-increasing raids of German barbarians were beginning to take their toll. In the year 330 A.D., the man pictured on this coin, Constantine, the first Christian emperor of the Romans, established a new capital for his empire at the mouth of the Bosphorus, in the Greek city of Byzantium. The Romans called the city Constantinople, and today we know it as Istanbul. Constantine outlawed the old Roman practice of crucifixion and decreed that Christianity was to be the new official religion of his entire empire. But even having a new religion and new capital city could not prevent the fall of the Roman Empire. For in the year 476 A.D., the empire permanently split apart. All of its western half fell under the control of German barbarian kings. And the greatness of imperial Rome soon faded from memory as Western Europe entered the Dark Ages, a 500-year period when both learning and artistic innovation declined. But the Dark Ages did not descend on the eastern half of the Roman Empire, which remained under the control of the emperors at Constantinople. And in this new Byzantine Empire, much of the greatness of ancient Rome would survive for almost another 1,000 years. The Byzantine Empire grew increasingly different from the old Empire of Rome. This occurred because its language was Greek, not Latin. Its traditions were deeply rooted in the civilization of ancient Greece. But perhaps the greatest difference is that the Byzantines were Christians, not pagans as the Romans had been. In fact, the Byzantine Empire was the world's first Christian state, and it sought to govern in accordance with Christian principles. But the Byzantine Empire shared much with the old Roman Empire that had given birth to it, because both its legal system and its form of government were Roman, and its rulers were the direct political descendants of the emperors of Rome. By 527 A.D., slightly over half a century after the collapse of the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire was still limited to just the eastern Mediterranean region. But over the next 38 years, things changed rapidly as a powerful emperor recaptured most of North Africa, the Balkan Peninsula, part of Spain, and all of Italy for the Byzantines. The emperor's name was Justinian. Here he is depicted in a mosaic of tiny-colored stones that adorns the wall of a 1,500-year-old church that stands near here in the city of Ravenna, Italy, once the most important Byzantine center west of Constantinople. Superficially, this mosaic simply portrays Justinian in the act of donating a golden bowl to the church. But it also shows us how the emperor was viewed by the people of this era to be a living bridge between the spiritual world of the church and the secular world of the state. To the left of the emperor are government officials and Byzantine soldiers symbolizing the power of the state, while to the right are a bishop and his priests symbolizing the power of the church. Justinian stands between the representatives of church and state. He wears the traditional purple robes of the Roman emperors and a jeweled crown signifying his role as the supreme earthly ruler. Justinian is also portrayed with a halo, showing that he was thought to possess enormous, almost saintly spiritual power as well. Most Byzantines believed that their empire was the one true Christian state established by God on earth, and that the main function of their state was to promote the Christian faith around the world. In fact, to demonstrate the strength of his faith, Justinian had old pagan temples torn down and used some of their stones to build this enormous church called Santa Sofia, which is the most famous building of the Byzantine era. The official state religion of the Byzantines developed into the type of Christianity called Eastern Orthodoxy, a faith that is headed by the Patriarch of Constantinople and that broke away from the Roman Catholic Church over 900 years ago. Orthodox Christians do not recognize the authority of the Pope and have never accepted Catholic religious innovations. Instead, they have tried to preserve ancient traditions of the original Christian Church. Over the centuries, Eastern Orthodox Christianity was spread northward by the Byzantines into Russia and Eastern Europe, where today Orthodox Church members number in excess of 150 million souls. For the first 3 centuries after the Roman Emperor Constantine's conversion to Christianity, there had been few real challenges to the growth of that religion. In fact, by the year 600 AD, Christianity had spread well beyond the Byzantine Empire to Ethiopia and into northern Europe as well. But this growth did not go unchallenged, because in the desert lands of Arabia, a new religion called Islam was being founded by the Prophet Muhammad. Islam means submission to God, and in the 7th century, this new form of worship was rapidly finding acceptance among the Arabian people. And since the early Muslims aimed at converting the whole world to their faith, it was inevitable that conflicts would occur with Christians who had similar goals for their own religion. Thus, by 636, only 4 years after Muhammad's death, Muslims had captured Byzantine Syria and the Holy Land of Palestine. A short time later, they went on to take Egypt, North Africa, and most of Spain from the Byzantines as well. And by the year 1050, so much territory had been yielded to the Muslims that the new boundaries of the once mighty Byzantine Empire were smaller than they had ever been before. Meanwhile, the vibrant new Muslim civilization now spanned 3 continents. On the continent of Europe, Spain remained under Muslim control for 7 centuries, a fact that greatly influenced both the Spanish language and culture. And it is here in Spain that some of the best examples of Islamic art and architecture are preserved in this ancient fortress called the Calat Alhambra, Red Castle, that overlooks the city of Granada. Inside the castle walls, we can glimpse the magical world of ancient Islam. Here we find all the signs of a very advanced civilization. For example, complex systems of pipes deliver water all the way to the top of this once barren hill to make beautiful reflecting pools, and to nourish lush gardens filled with beautiful plants and fruit trees. Here, too, we can find the splendid palaces of the kings who ruled this part of Muslim Spain. In these palaces, wherever one looks, artists have made intricate designs to create an atmosphere both of richness and luxury. In some rooms, the walls and pillars have been covered with delicate patterns skillfully carved into stone or plaster, while in others, tiles have been arranged into complicated yet fascinating geometric shapes. But besides Islam's tremendous accomplishments in architecture and art, they also made significant advances in the fields of science and mathematics. And it is important to note that much of Islam's scholarly work was done during the Dark Ages, when the growth of knowledge had all but stopped in the Christian countries of Western Europe. As we learned earlier, the Islamic civilization was highly successful in the arts of warfare as well. For the Quran, the sacred book of Islam, teaches that sincere believers must serve as warriors to defend and spread the word of God. It was this belief that led Muslims to conquer Palestine in the 7th century, and it was this conquest that would eventually lead to the Christian invasions of the Near East, called the Crusades. The first attempt by Christians to regain the Holy Land began in the year 1095, at a time when Western Europe was just emerging from the Dark Ages, and a religious fervor was sweeping the land, as magnificent new cathedrals and monasteries sprouted up everywhere. At this time, the Pope was asked by the Byzantine Emperor for his help in protecting the Christian citizens of Constantinople from the increasing attacks by Muslim Turks. The Pope agreed, hoping this gesture might make it possible for him to gain control over the Orthodox churches of the East. It was here in Clermont, France, that the Pope preached the First Crusade. He summoned all Christian warriors to arms to help their fellow Christians in the East defend themselves from the Muslims and to regain control of the Holy Land. For those who left their homes to join the crusade, the Pope offered a wonderful reward, the removal of all punishment for their sins, which opened up the pathway to heaven. The Crusader depicted here was Robert, Duke of Normandy. He was the son of William the Conqueror, the Norman lord who became king after he conquered England in the year 1066. Robert was one of the most famous men to join the First Crusade. But he was just one among many thousands of people from Western Europe who made the long, and at that time extremely difficult journey to fight in the Holy Land. By 1099, the First Crusade had achieved its goals. The Crusaders had taken the great fortress city of Antioch and had then gone on to capture Jerusalem, viciously slaughtering its citizens in the process. By 10 years after the First Crusade, 4 new states had been founded in the Near East. These were the Crusader principalities of Edessa, Antioch, Jerusalem, and Tripoli, each of which was ruled by a French knight who had led the crusade. So for a time, a large area existed along the eastern Mediterranean where feudal lords built French-style castles and imposed the strange customs of their homeland upon the local people. But these principalities didn't last for long, for in 1144, the state of Edessa was recaptured by the Muslims, provoking a second crusade. Over the next 126 years, men displaying the symbol of the cross on their shields engaged in 6 more crusades. Most were unsuccessful, and in the end, the Muslims recaptured all their lost land, and the Christian settlements were wiped out. Strangely enough, the Fourth Crusade resulted in the deaths of large numbers of Orthodox Christians at the hands of the Catholic Crusaders. This occurred because the ruler of Venice, which at that time was a very powerful, independent trading kingdom, had worked out a deal to provide Crusaders with extra boats and soldiers so they could capture Constantinople, the wealthiest city in the world. Thus, in the year 1204, as the Crusaders anchored in the harbor at Constantinople, they seemed to have forgotten all about their Muslim foes. For the battle that followed turned into a 3-day orgy of looting, raping, and killing. The Crusaders even smashed the altar of the sacred church of Santa Sofia and took the pieces home as souvenirs. As a result of the Fourth Crusade, the ruler of Venice personally crowned the new emperor he had chosen for Byzantium, and in this way, Italians ended up ruling the empire for the next 60 years. And it was during this time that these 4 magnificent bronze horses, symbols of the greatness of the Byzantine Empire that for 6 centuries had graced the splendid hippodrome of Constantinople, were hauled off to Venice, where they remain to this day. In the century and a half that followed the last Crusade, the Byzantine Empire continued to crumble until it was so weakened it finally fell to the Turks in 1453. And the new rulers changed the religion of the world's first Christian state to Islam. During the era of the Crusades, roughly 6,000 people a year, both crusaders and pilgrims, made the journey to the east. As they returned home to Europe, they brought back tales of the fantastic new things they had seen. But they also came back with products that were unknown in the West, such as sugar, rice, cotton, and carpets. And because in the towns of Europe demand for these new products was great, a brisk trade soon developed between East and West. With this growth in commerce came increased prosperity, accompanied by an exchange of new ideas that helped fuel cultural rebirth of the West, called the Renaissance.